各位老师，各位同学，大家好，我是高健。What's up, everybody? It is Jake from Skritter. It is Friday. I have some coffee. I've been up for a little while, but I thought I would record a video today. And this video is actually a project and a task that I'm working on, and that is to come up with a study guide for our slang video that we just dropped. If you've already seen it on YouTube, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, go check it out. It is 10 slang that Maria and Iona talk about and go through, and it's all in Chinese. And this is intriguing and I think really helpful. I love this kind of content. Not only can we come up with 10 really cool ways of saying different things and looking at slang and how kids on the internet basically these days are using Mandarin and English and Pinyin and Taiwanese and whatever to combine together, to own the language. But because this video is all in Chinese and because we have subtitles, we can actually extract so much more from this kind of video, right? These kinds of videos are amazing, watching vloggers and YouTubers and following along with things, especially things that are in native language entirely, is just a gold mine of information. So today I'm going to go through and watch along with the video. We're going to edit and cut as I go through. Where I'm going to do a live viewing. We're going to pause along the way and just pull out some highlights. And I'm also going to show you, how I would just go about doing this generally. We can build Skritter decks off of these kinds of things. We can mine a lot of vocabulary and mine a lot of information out of this, and we can just use it as a practice opportunity. I'm going to show you exactly how I do that today with YouTube and with a tool called Language Reactor. So we're going to switch over to this other camera. All right, so the tool that we're going to be using here is Language Reactor. I have the plugin installed. We can use this on Netflix. We can use this on YouTube. I like the plugin. I'd love to have some of this technology in Skritter someday. We are working on some cool stuff for version 4 that's coming out. But for right now, free content out there, Language Reactor. It works quite well. And what I really like is the tools and the control that we have while we're watching a video, especially one like this. So right out of the gate, things that we're looking for on YouTube when we follow people or look for things or we're just browsing around for content, if we really want to get the most out of software like Language Reactor, we want to check for closed captioning. So we can turn it on, we can turn it off. Some of this stuff will get generated. It's probably better when it's not just generated and it's not also embedded into the video, right? So we have subtitles on this video by design, and that way people can choose the subtitling. So, we want to be on the lookout for things like this, right? And on this particular video on Skritter, we have some options. So I'll use traditional, but before I do that, I guess tip number 1, don't be afraid to watch things multiple times. So I've watched this video a couple times at this point. I watched it during the editing process and gave some of my feedback. I just spent an hour watching it. One thing that I will say about Chinese is so many different services out there, so much media really does use subtitling. There's a lot of, 谐音字啊. There's a lot of homonyms that's, they sound the same, but they have different meanings. And so by having subtitling, you see it everywhere, right? You turn on a news broadcast, you go to a movie, you turn on social media, you turn on IG, whatever it is, and you're going to see subtitling. And this is standard for native content. And I was talking to my Chinese teacher about this the other day. There's a lot of accenting. People have a lot of different accents when they're speaking Mandarin. China is a massive country with so many different people and so many different dialects and so many, but Mandarin is the standard, right? But when people are speaking, if they're not broadcast level Mandarin, or someone does come from an area with a dialect and maybe they don't speak Mandarin every single day at home or whatever, then having that subtitling is just an easier way to process information. Right? It's additional information, but it also becomes kind of a crutch for us when we're learning Chinese, similar to having pinyin above things or below things or whatever, right? Or having the English underneath it that you can always reference. So one way that we can get a lot out of these kinds of videos that have subtitles is by viewing them a couple different times. And maybe the first run through is actually just with subtitling off, right? So we're just going to follow along and we're going to see how much information can we glean and understand by just listening without any.
可以把觉得有自信知道的
All right, so here, we're saying turn on English 中文 captions. But I would challenge you to not do that. Watch it first without it, or watch it second without it. Turn it on, understand, and then go back in, right? The rewatchability of this kind of stuff goes up incredibly when you can adjust the parameters and tweak and tune them a little bit. So something that we can try here. So that's kind of tip number 1. All right. So now that we've gotten that tip out of the way, let's go down here. We have LLY and we can turn it on. And we're going to notice that things change a little bit. I have to select the subtitle. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to go with traditional, personal preference, and talk a little bit about some cool things that we can do with this plugin. All right, so first thing is we turn it on and off. Keyboard shortcuts, so previous A, repeat S, next D. But let's just run through some of those things and see what they do in the context of this video. So let's go in here and let's press A.
马老师可以把觉得有自信知道的拿起来，或者是把觉得有趣的拿起来。但是呢，马老师
So if you look on the right-hand side
是不是都有
here,
一种
it's moving along. I can pause it.
是不是都有一种
真的很难，对，真的很难。
And if I want full control, I can press Q and it's going to automatically pause playback at the end of every subtitle. So now I have full control. If I want to hear that sentence again, I can press S.
我开始脱离的就是那些青少年的圈子。
All right. So why is this useful? If we want to get in deeper to the understanding of anything, right? So we can extract anything, and this is all going to be based on your own particular level, your own particular interest, your own particular whatever, right? Then every single time that the subtitle ends, we have an opportunity to go in and mine this for data. So we can do that here. We can just read it, right? 我开始脱离了那些青少年的圈子. If we don't understand what some of these things mean, right, we can do a hover over dictionary. 开始脱离了那些青少年的圈子. And we can take that a step further. If it's something interesting, we can click on it and get the pop-up version. We can see the meaning here, noun, adolescent, teenager, youngster. We can see the current example sentence in the context.
我开始脱离的就是那些青少年的圈子。我那时候
Okay, we can see some other examples from Tatuiba. I will say that Tatuiba with like Chinese and Japanese, sometimes there's a lot of like 外来语. And what I mean by that is that many of these sentences are like imported from another language and then translated in, often machine translated in to Tatuiba in Chinese or Japanese or whatever. So, use these with a grain of salt. I think it's good reference points though.
汤姆是个普通的青少年。
The audio here is going to be generated
爱是给青少年的。
from, it's computer generated generally in these particular examples. So we see a couple of extra examples here. We can see this word. You can do more with this stuff depending. We're going to mark this one as known. I don't have an account. Never mind. So that's the first thing we can do. We can go in and mine information from an individual sentence. We can then press S. So now that we've understood this sentence, right, we can use our keyboard shortcuts and we can listen to it again.
我开始脱离的就是那些青少年的圈子。我开始脱离的就是那些青少年的圈子。
Okay, so we could do this. We can mimic. 我开始脱离了那些青少年的圈子。
我开始脱离的就是那些青少年的圈子。
So we can hear these things as many times as we want, and we just do that really quickly by pressing S on our keyboard using Language Reactor. So now we can scan ahead if we want to.
我那时候在查的时候也是有一种，我不知道他们在干嘛。马老师上吧，你觉得哪一个有趣？
我们先说这个一些英文的好了，这个 YYDS 是什么意思？
Right, so if you ever want to just pause during the video, we just press the space bar and we can go into things. We can, over here, we can do this.
通常这一种呢，就是那个
We can copy our
从中国
sentences
传来的，因为台湾不用
As
拼音。
pause again. So some other interesting things here about Language React in general that I think are worth highlighting. So our subtitles here are on the side. If we want to, we can close this. So if you just want control and the hover over dictionary, then we can just do that. And the same things are going to happen.
对，
Turn this on, turn this off, okay? If we want the subtitling to come back, we can move this around. You didn't even know that. If you X out, then you can find it back over here. It was just like way too hidden in that light. So another interesting thing here is words. So we can see vocabulary levels. You can set vocabulary levels if you have an account. If we're trying to get information from a video that is online and all in, your target language, then this kind of word mining can be quite interesting. You can see like what you know and what you don't know. And it kind of gives you a sense really quickly of like where you might want to be focusing your attention. If some of these things you're looking through here and you're like, I don't know what this means, then starting with the rank 1 to 100, the rank 100 to 200, 200 to 300, all this stuff is super high frequency. You're going to hear it all the time in Mandarin. And then as we go down, now we're getting a little bit more subjective the further down we get of things that are interesting. Some things might be interesting to you, but maybe not to, to everything. Now, we have to take this with a grain of salt because all of this stuff is actually being talked about here in this topic, right? And this is a pretty common occurrence that happens. We open up a textbook, we open up a news story, we listen to the news, we open up a website. They're going to talk about whatever they talk about. But generally speaking, if you don't know where to start to get information from these kinds of videos, you're at an intermediate level, a beginner level, upper intermediate level, maybe let these frequency and rank orders be your guide in terms of like where you should be filling in gaps along the way. So just an interesting little thing there. If you are logged in, you can save and see the words that you have there. So let's carry on for a minute.
是永远的神的意思。
永远的神，拼音很重要。好，永远的神什么意思？
就是假如说我就可以说某某男明星是我永远的神，还是像对我来说就是火锅，就是 YYDS。
All right, so here, what I think is kind of interesting to look for and be on the lookout for when you're watching these kinds of videos is not only are we going to reference the word frequency, but in the context of the video, when you're watching it, when you're rewatching it, when you're listening to it, right? How often are some of these words coming up over and over and over again, right? This is a video about slang. We're going to be talking about slang inside of this video. We are going to have things like YYDS, 永远的神, right? But when we're watching this video, we can also extract tons of information and tons of good examples and things that we can practice based on how often other things happen inside of the dialogue, right? You have two people conversing, they're talking about things. If you watch this video right now, you are going to hear 就是 come up like a million times. You might already know what 就是 means, but here, through these contexts, we can actually see and observe and get a lot of examples and kind of start building our own 语感, our sense of the language around when these words are coming up. And we can start extracting out some of these sentences and adding them to our own kind of like lexical phrase book, right? So 就是说, 就是假如说, right? Thinking about these things, talking about things in this way will make you sound more native. And so these kinds of videos that exist on the internet, right? They're a perfect place to mine that kind of information, that kind of data, and just expose ourselves to it and wash over it over and over and over again. We've got a book coming out. It might already be out already, all about learning Chinese. And inside of that book, we talk about the rule of 3 as like a good guiding light and just a general benchmark. Hear something, see something 3 times, probably worth paying more attention and seeing if you understand it. So 就是 as an example here, okay? 就是假如说, right? In the 7 subtitles, 就是 has come up twice, okay? So 就是 here is a little bit of a filler, like I can say, right? Like, right? These kinds of utterances. So when we're thinking about what we're trying to say or we want to describe something, 就是假如说, well, 的意思就是说, right? This kind of stuff. Super high frequency. All right. So another thing that you're going to find and something to pay attention to inside of videos like this is when we start seeing reduplication. So I think there's a lot of memes on the internet about, Chinese people don't say 你好, Chinese people don't say bye bye, Chinese people don't say 对, they say 你好, 对, bye bye, bye bye, bye bye, bye bye, bye bye. So they overemphasize things by saying them a lot. And we do this in English as well when we're agreeing, right. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, or whatever. Here, 对, 就是 again, 就是来了, 就是在你心里永远的神, right? So if you watch this video and pay attention, that's another thing that you can look at is how are people reacting to different kinds of things, right? You have a dialogue between 2 different people. What is the kind of stuff that how do they agree with people? How do they disagree with people? How do they think about things and pause for a moment? And I think it's worth writing down or at least paying attention to those things. The more deliberately you watch something, the more deliberately you put on those kinds of lenses, the more that you can extract out. So it's not just the vocabulary being taught, it's also the things in there. Maybe it's the hand language and the motions and the, 肢体语言, the body language that is being conveyed. A variety of different things can be extracted from these kinds of videos, which is really cool. So here, reduplication, we can hear it in 对. If we go down again,
火锅 YYDS。
对。好, okay?
麻雀的雀，食物的食。
All right, here we're just going to pause it just as like a general thing that I think is really interesting about these kinds of videos. So in Chinese, if we're talking about different kinds of vocabulary, and I think this most often comes up when we're talking about names, we are going to say blank, the blank, blank, the blank, right? So 大家好，我是高健，高低的高，健康的健。So I'm saying, hey, my name is Gao Jian. And immediately, if you're a Chinese person, you're like, 哪一个高，哪个健, right? What are the characters that are being used? So here, Maria is seeing this word 确实 for the first time, and the way that she describes it out when she's reading it out and describing it to us is 麻雀的雀, sparrow, 食物的食, 食 as in food. This is a very common way of describing different things, and it's really cool to see this like happening inside of the video, right? So again, these different kinds of utterances, these different phrasings, this kind of stuff can get extracted out as things that we can pay attention to and we can practice. We can see an example of it here, and then we can, learn from it, do a deep dive, and apply that later in the future.
因为我很喜欢吃零食。
因为所以. So another thing that we can do is look at the way that sentences are put together. We're going to see a lot of 因为所以. 因为 is 可能，但是就是对，那既然。
既然今年这个电影非常的火红，所以我们就看好。
Since this movie is very popular this year, 所以, so these like sentence patterns. Great place to mine these kinds of things is native examples and utterances. You're going to see them used in context. We can extract those out. We can, say, oh, I don't know what jiran is. Great. Well, now we have this sentence. And not only do we have an example of usage here, but we have it in the context of this video. So studying these kinds of words, I think these are the kinds of things where like you make a note of them, you think about, can I use them? Maybe you make a challenge of yourself of like changing the way that you talk for a little while or whatever. But watching these kinds of videos, you are going to see these things come up time and time and time again. And that's where we can use our like word frequency. Let's see if we can find jiran on here. Where does it rank? All right, rank 1,000 to 1,500.
既然今年这个电影非常的火红，所以我们
你既然已经知道了，还问什么? Right, so anywho, 既然 here is not as high frequency as 因为所以 or some of these other 就是说比如说假如说 whatever. So looking at that, watching these things, trying to understand and hear it, hey, is this coming up over and over again? And maybe it isn't. But like looking at your sentence structures and how they're composed can give you a pretty good idea of the scaffolding that you'll need to create language. We're not going to watch this entire video. Today, the focus is really just like how to use something like Language Reactor to study. We do not have to just watch a video one time, right? It's 9 minutes, but this 9 minutes contains so much information and so many different things that we can find that are interesting depending on who we are and what we're into. And yeah, that's the purpose of this video today. All right, I've been rambling on for 30 minutes almost, and it's time to wrap this thing up. Hopefully you found those tips and tricks useful. If you haven't done so already, go and check out the Slang Guide. Go check out Skritter, check out our application, and go check out our book that's coming out where you can learn about the rule of 3 and so much more. That is all for now. Thanks for watching. 下次再见. Peace.